You are at the 2021 Landscape Lecture with the City of Greeley. Tonight's speaker is Amy Lentz. She is at the CSU Cooperative Extension Office, and she is the horticulture specialist there. I'm Ruth Quaid with the City of Greeley Water Conservation Program, and Amy Lentz is with the CSU Weld County Extension, and then I went ahead and put the Master Gardener logo up there since that's where you started.
Tonight we're going to talk about dry shade and the planning and the planting that goes along with that. So as Ruth said, my name's Amy Lentz. I work for CSU Extension. Our office is in Greeley at the Island Grove Park. And that's also what you're seeing right behind me is our part of our demo garden. It's not blooming with tulips yet, but hopefully in another maybe month and a half, it will be really pretty, blooming with lots of good stuff. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. My email address is on there on the screen. Also, as Ruth mentioned, you can contact your Weld County Master Gardeners with any of your questions about your yard, your garden, growing vegetables, growing fruit, anything like that. So, so let's jump into it. I do want to let you know the picture that you're looking at in front of you is my dry shade area at my house. So we'll look at this a little bit more as we go along. So let's go ahead and get started. So when a lot of you, especially those of you like me who aren't originally from Colorado, when you think of shade and shade plants, you might be thinking of things like this. So we have on the left-hand side, a beautiful rhododendron garden at the University of Washington Botanic Gardens in Washington State, which is a very, very different climate than us. It's very moist, it's very temperate. You know, they don't have big swings in temperature and their soil's usually acid. You'll see the same type of thing down around Georgia. If you watch the Masters, you know Augusta, they have a lot of rhododendrons there too. And we can't grow these in Colorado, so we're not going to talk about those shade plants today. On the right-hand side, you see the hydrangeas. Those are macrophylla hydrangeas, water hogs. So the actual name hydrangea means water, and that is taken at the Norfolk Botanic Garden, where they get way more rain and precipitation than we get in a year. So you can grow a hydrangea macrophylla here in Colorado, but it's tough and you do need to give it lots of water. So we're going to talk about dry shade today. So we're not going to cover these two plants. So, and hopefully though, you'll see that in this next picture that you can have pretty plants in dry shade and they will flourish and look great. And they fit more of our Colorado landscape. So Ruth mentioned our demonstration garden, and this is two pictures of that garden. And it's actually a pretty shady garden. There's areas that have full sun. So the foreground of the picture on the left is actually in full sun. So you can see there's a little bit of sedum and ice plant and salvias. Those just sit in the sun. But then just behind them are some of our dry shade plants that I'm going to cover today. The other side here on the right-hand side, this is a long walkway in front of our building, and it's lined with pear trees. And so it actually gets pretty deep shade in some areas all day long. So we're going to define shade in the next few slides. And then I'm going to go through a little bit of the planning process, how you can create shade if you want to. And then we'll move into all those plant selections that are going to do much better in shade. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So I like to kind of give people an idea of just how much precipitation we receive in Colorado per year. And as you can see here, Greeley is kind of on the lower end of our state. We get about 14.4 inches of precipitation per year. And typically most of that is coming to us in the form of snow. And we're in for a big treat this weekend. We're gonna be getting a lot of snow. So that's great. But you know, we don't usually see that. And we have pretty dry summers, pretty dry soils to work with. It varies throughout the state. Our mountain areas tend to get more precipitation than we do down here on the plains, but nonetheless, all of these totals, even the 20 or the 23 inches that you see there for Steamboat Springs, that's a lot less than the rest of the United States. I moved here about 5 years ago from Kentucky, and we would average between 36 and 40 inches of rain a year, or of precipitation a year. So we are dry. So we've established that fact. So we're going to talk about dry shade. So let's go ahead and define what exactly does shade mean. And really, shade has, when we start talking about full sun, part shade, full shade, we're actually referring to the hours of direct sunlight. So it's a little bit, backwards when you think about it. So I'm going to start with the least amount of shade, which is your full sun exposure. And that's anywhere where you have 6 or more hours of direct summer sun per day. Then we have what's called light shade, and that's 3 to 5 hours of direct sun in the summer. And then, with this type of shade, it's a sunny enough location for some of your sun-loving plants will grow, and they'll grow just fine, but they'll also, it'll also be adaptable for many of those shade plants. Then we have partial shade. Partial shade is at least 2 hours of direct sun, but then shaded for at least half the day. And this is what I think most of us think of when we think of part shade, or when we hear, not full shade, but part shade. So light shade, you usually don't see that on a plant label, but you do see part shade. Consider the time of day that you're getting that 2 hours of direct sun. It could be morning sun, or it could be afternoon sun. And morning sun is usually cooler than afternoon sun. Then we move into full shade. So that's less than 1 hour of direct sun each day, or dappled shade throughout most of the day. And here, this could be caused by things like trees, maybe it's the north side of a building, or fences. And then our last category of shade is what we call deep shade. And these are those few places where you get no direct sun and little indirect sunlight reaching the ground throughout the day. So places that you might find this would be, for example, under a thick evergreen tree, underneath your deck, or that passageway between your houses. And these are tough spots because plants, plants need sunlight to live, or they need some sort of light to live. And there's just not many options for this deep shade that can make it without at least a little bit of sunlight per day. So as we move through, I mentioned through this class, we're going to talk about starting with a plan. I do want to talk a little bit about water harvesting just because I think it's a hot topic and it fits in with what we're going to talk about tonight, and also kind of helps us think about water conservation. We'll cover those shade trees that you can use then to make that shade if you're starting out from the very beginning. And then again, we'll go through all those great plants. So let's start with a plan. And what you see in front of you is actually the plan for my backyard. About 3 years ago, my husband and I moved into one of those new build houses in Weld County. There's lots of these developments going up all over, and we got one of those. And we did not have a backyard landscaping. It was just completely bare. And I wanted to install Xeriscape instead of a lawn. And so you can see that I started with the plan. Now, your plan doesn't have to be fancy like this. I just happen to have a design background, so I did my own plan with my own design. But this can be as simple as just looking at the yard, maybe drawing some big circles of this is an area of sun, this is an area of shade. You can use Google Maps if you want to take like a screenshot of an aerial photo of your yard and then print that out, and you can use that to mark the different locations. But think about things like, where are things sloping? Where is the water running off? Where are your downspouts? And then also consider what you want to happen in different areas. So you can see we have a garden area. We have a fire pit area. I've got a tree that I've added in. And so you'll get to see a little bit more of this as we go along. But I just wanted to say, you really do need to start out with some sort of a plan if you're starting from scratch. So one of the ways that you can do that plan is the 7 steps of Xeriscape. So Xeriscape is this term that just means low water landscaping. It's not zero-scape, that means no plants. It actually just means dry. So it's a dry landscape. There are some different things to think about when you're planning out how to make that dry landscape thrive. The picture you see in front of you here is the Greeley Xeriscape demonstration garden. And on the City of Greeley's website, and I put the URL down at the bottom there, they actually list out these 7 steps. These 7 steps have been around and used across the state to help you work through that process of putting in a xeric landscape. Many of us have bluegrass lawns and trees and water-loving shrubs and water-loving perennials. And so to make this change really does take some thought. So first thing is plan ahead. Then you want to make sure you're improving the soil if you need to. I'll have a slide on that next. We won't talk about limiting turf areas, but that is one thing that you can do to cut back on that water usage. Efficient irrigation is important. Selecting the appropriate plants is really important. And then there's also other things like using mulch that can help you conserve more water. And then finally, that seventh step is just to maintain it, because we typically, don't have landscapes that you can just plant and then forget about. They always take a little bit of maintenance. So back to that plan. So this is step one. And I mentioned, you saw my plan. There is that little spot right here. This is the north side of my house and where I have dry shade. And so I've planted a few things in there, and we'll get to know actually all of these plants as we go through the class today. So I mentioned soil is our second step there. And really, there's a big question mark you can see after the title. Do you improve the soil? And that really depends, because many of our low water xeric plants are going to prefer unamended or even just slightly amended native soil that's fairly low in organic matter. And the same goes for the natives. If you're wondering what kind of soil you've got, you can do a soil test. It'll let you know your nutrient content. And you can also look at CSU's fact sheet that we have out about choosing a soil amendment. But as I mentioned, what we're focusing on today is that dry shade. And so these are low water, typically xeric plants. And so you're probably not going to have to do a whole lot of soil amendment. There are some things that you do need to think about, though. If you've got really heavy clay soil, you might need to amend it to improve drainage. That's a tricky thing to do. So I would encourage you, reach out to the extension office if that's something you're having trouble with. But you can use things like expanded shale. If you just add sand to clay, you're going to end up with a brick. You're going to end up with concrete. You have to add a lot of sand. So again, talk to your extension office if that's what you're dealing with, because that's going to be a little bit different. But there are a lot of these plants that'll do just fine in that clay. If there's something different, I'll let you know. Along with those steps, again, I'm not going to cover all 7 because I really do want to jump more into the different plants that you can use in dry shade. But one of those steps is to use mulch. I think that's step 6. And I just want to let you know that mulch is a really great thing. It's going to help improve your soil. It's going to help protect your plants. It's going to inhibit weeds as much as it can. There's always going to be weeds to deal with, but it can reduce that irrigation by as much as 50%. And when you're dealing with dry shade, that mulch is actually really important because it's going to keep that area even more damp underneath. And so that's really good. We want that. And then that last step is step 7, was to maintain your landscape. And I just want to make sure that you understand that even the lowest water using landscape or xeriscape is going to need supplemental water during these extended hot, dry periods that we have. Even in shade, if it's been weeks and weeks since we've seen any kind of precipitation and you don't have any kind of irrigation system for your xeriscape, then you will need to give them a little bit of a drink of water. Also, along with that, as you're getting these plants established, you will need to water them pretty, maybe a couple times a week just to get them started. So, and if it's really hot, maybe even a little bit more. After that first year, though, with your perennials, you can back off on that water a lot. You might even get to the point where you're not watering this at all, except for during these hot, dry periods. So I want to cover a little bit about water harvesting next. And really, water harvesting is something that we can do to put the water where we want it on our landscape. And you can do this in 2 different ways. You can do this with active water harvesting or passive water harvesting. And I've just got a few slides to kind of show you what that looks like. So active water harvesting, things like rain barrels is your way to go. These actually were outlawed in Colorado until 2016 because our water law is so crazy and we share our water with, I believe it's 7 or 8 other states. And so it was just one of those things where the water system is so intricate and so fragile that they didn't want people just pulling water out of it from rain barrels. But science had shown that it wasn't going to affect the system that much. And so now we can start to collect water on our own landscapes, which is great. It doesn't rain a whole lot, so this is not something that's going to be the answer to all your problems. It's going to be there for supplemental watering when you need it. You basically just use a storage container with a sealable lid. You put that above ground, and then you're going to collect that water from the downspout. It's going to go into that container, and then you've got a spout at the bottom where you can then take that water out and use it on your landscape. There are some rules surrounding this. Only single family homes or multiple family homes with up to 4 units can have a rain barrel. It's not something you can put on your 3-car garage. If it's separate, like you have one of those shop buildings, you can't put a rain barrel on that. It has to be your residential home. Also, if you live in an apartment building with maybe 8 units, you can't put one on that either. So there are some rules around this, and CSU's got fact sheets that will help explain the rules. But you can put up to 2 of these on your house, and you'll have a combined storage then of 110 gallons. That's a 55-gallon drum or a 55-gallon trash can, and that gets you to the 110. And then one of those other things that you need to think about is if you're going to be putting in a rain barrel to water that area of dry shade, it has to be used outside, not inside. You can't take it inside and water your plants. There are a lot of good things that come along with rainwater. It's softer in nature. It has lower salts and it's unchlorinated, which a lot of your plants are going to really love. If you're wondering just how much space can I water with a rain barrel, if it's full and you have 2 of them, you can cover an area of about 180 square feet with an inch of water. And there's money savings and all kinds of other great things about these. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is an option now for you. The other way that you can collect rainwater is passively. And really with that, you're just diverting the water over the land to your areas of vegetation and then using it immediately. There's no holding it in a barrel. It's just, it comes out of that downspout and makes its way to your planting. And we can do that through different ways. We can build swales, which will spread it out horizontally, and maybe you plant along the swale. You can create little berms and micro basins. You can use French drains to really move the water away from your structures and into certain areas. Or you can do what are called bioinfiltration gardens. And that's simply just a rain garden like you see here. Now, this one is in full sun, but you might have an area maybe on the north side of your house where you have a downspout kind of close by and you want to divert that water then into your little shade garden as well. So they're not necessarily just for sunny spots. However, I wouldn't be building a massive bioinfiltration garden in a really deeply shaded area because you do want a little bit of evaporation. You don't want that water sitting. So there's a lot to learn about rain gardens. I've got a whole other class about those, but back to that landscape I showed you in the beginning with my plan. This is our new build house. You can see that, yep, there was literally nothing there. And so we decided to build one of those rain gardens along this fence area here. And this actually is kind of a shady spot, especially in this corner. Hopefully you can see my cursor there. And so we did divert water down to that spot and then did some plantings there. The area that you were seeing in that other picture is right around here next to that downspout and in this area here. So you can see that shade. And then here is the result of that. And so there's that area of shade. It's pretty shady over here as well. But then we've got that rain garden now, moving that water into that area. And there's a lot more planted here. This was taken a couple years ago after just 1 year of growth. One other thing I want to mention about these, if you're going to be doing this on your landscape in the planning process, is think about trees. So if you look to the very far right, you can see I planted a tree here, and that water is being diverted to the drip line of the future drip line of that tree. So that's another thing that you can do when you're planning out how to move water across your landscape and make the most of it. because again, there's just not a lot. Here's some other examples of passive rainwater collection. You can see how they really do fit well into the landscape. And then notice the two on the right here are in shaded areas. So, you know, definitely some options, and we're going to cover what you can plant around those. So I mentioned if you're going to be doing things like planting trees into a xeric landscape plan like we have here, there are certain trees that you want to select to create that shade, and there's certain trees that aren't going to do as well. So again, we're kind of starting from the ground up and we're still in that planning phase. So let's talk a little bit about how to create shade with proper tree selection. Trees are an investment, they're expensive, they're long living, usually, typically, hopefully. And so you really want to be thoughtful about your trees, how you've planted them, what kind you've bought, and so forth. Choose the correct trees for those dry locations. You'll need to provide irrigation for those trees, especially to get them established. And it's a little bit longer for the trees. So I mentioned with the perennials, you can usually kind of cut back on your water after the first year. With trees and shrubs, you really want to be maybe thinking more 2 or 3 years before you really start to pull back on the water. A lot of people will go from a lawn situation and then they'll want to do a xeric landscape instead of their lawn. So they'll rip the lawn out, they'll take out most of the irrigation, and they'll put back in all the water-wise plants, which is great, but then they've got that tree next to it that used to be getting all of that lawn water, and now it's not. So think about those things. Some trees are going to do better than others in that situation. And then, you know, once you've got your tree in there and you know what you're going to put in, then you can plan for that future shade that it's going to provide. So let's talk about a few of those trees that are good for drier locations that can create the shade for you if you're looking to do that. So the first one we have here is a bur oak. This is Quercus macrocarpa. This is a big shade tree. So if you're gonna, if you've got a big lot or you've got acreage, then this might be one that you're gonna think about using. If you've just got a normal yard in Greeley or a neighboring town, this is not the tree for your yard, because it will get to be 70 feet high and 60 feet wide at maturity, full maturity. Now it'll take a while to get there, but that's just too big for the spot. But if you've got the room for it, it's a good one. It's adaptable to our high soil pH. It's got interesting fruits, but you need to provide some irrigation to this tree. As it gets older, maybe it can get its roots out and find the water elsewhere. Kentucky coffee tree is a tree that's close to my heart because it's native to where I'm from. It actually grows along the roadsides in Kentucky and in the worst of worst spaces. So Kentucky coffee tree is a great shade tree for our xeric landscapes. It provides a really nice shade, and it's what we call dappled shade. And you can see that in the picture at the very bottom of that tree there. You can see how there's light and shade happening at the same time. It will also get kind of large, so 55 feet high, 35 feet wide. It's got good fall color. It's got interesting seed pods if it's a female. And it, as I mentioned, can tolerate a wide range of sites. But if you're wanting to create shade, this is a nice one for Colorado landscapes. Maybe you don't have that much space, you want to go a little bit smaller. We have another option, that's golden rain tree. This isn't one that we really recommend all that often, and I'm not really sure why. It's, you know, some people, it's kind of an old-fashioned tree maybe. It's just kind of fallen out of the trend, but it is a good tree for dry locations. It'll get to be about 30 feet high and 30 feet wide, but that's at maturity. And honestly, I've seen some of these that are pretty mature and they're still not that big. Probably more in the 20-foot range is more typical, but it's got really nice yellow flowers that hang down in the middle of summer, and usually in July, it's flowering like this, and in June. And then those flowers, as they get pollinated, they turn into these lantern-like fruits, and they're really cool. They look like little paper lanterns hanging all over the tree. This one can handle a tough site. There's 2 of these growing in the Inferno strip. Right before you get to the corner of 14th Ave and 10th Street, there on the one-way part, there's 2 of these, and they're doing just fine. Another option for the smaller yard would be a Tatarian Maple. This one will get to be about 20 feet high, 20 feet wide. You can get single or multiple stems. It's got really neat fruits, again, in the middle of the summer that give it a nice red. It almost looks like it's flowering red, but it's actually those little samaras. And then it does get red fall color. And you can see in the picture there at the bottom that it also creates a nice shade underneath of it. And there's other trees that you can get on the deciduous end for dry sites. I've got a whole list here. The ones that you're seeing in the picture are the big tooth maple at the top and then the sensation box elder at the bottom. A lot of people want to plant maples for shade trees in Colorado, and most of the maples don't do so well here, but these two do just fine. And that's because they are just more adapted to our area. So try those out, and as opposed to using like a red maple or something. But there's others, there's sugar maples too that will work, but they take a little bit more water. I should mention all of the trees that are on this list are all for dry sites. If you want an evergreen to create that shade, the one that I would recommend would be a Ponderosa Pine. It's a native, it can get pretty large, so give it some space. But it's really, it's nice bark, it has nice long needles, you know, your typical pine cones, and it creates this nice large area of dappled shade. Sometimes too, it can take on these interesting forms, which is kind of what you see there in the picture. They'll be a little bit different looking in the landscape. They don't grow straight up like they do out in the forests. And then other evergreen trees for your dry sites. Now, bristlecone pine and pinyon pine are in the picture. There's really not too many other evergreens that will handle a dry site that will also create shade underneath of them. So these are more just if you want to add in an evergreen into your xeric landscape, these are the ones you want to choose. But stay away from the blue spruce and the white fir in a xeric situation because they do have medium to high water requirements. So, but anyway, these, you wouldn't be planting underneath of the bristlecone pine or the pinyon pine. It's not in the class for that reason. It's more just to say, if you want this, this is what you want to add. Okay, so now is the part of the class that everybody's been waiting for. It's what plants can I now plant into my dry shade? So what we're going to do is we're going to, I want to start out by just pointing you to some really great resources. Plant Select is a program between CSU and Denver Botanic Gardens, and then the Plant Select program, where they are testing plants that do really well in our area. Actually, they do well in this 6-state region from West Texas all the way up through Montana. And they've got a fantastic website. I encourage you to go check it out with lots of information. And I'll be showing you a couple of design plans that they offer as well. Ruth mentioned earlier, Garden in a Box, that comes to you from Resource Central. They have those they're kind of like pre-packaged, pre-planned out gardens that you can just buy a couple flats of plants and you don't have to think too much. I'll show you a couple of those too after we get through the plants. Also, check out the City of Greeley's website. I was pleasantly surprised to see just how much information is on there. Lots of plant lists. They've got 6 pages of perennials alone for you to choose from for a xeric landscape. And that's also the picture that you see here. That's the Greeley Xeriscape demonstration garden. And that's kind of the shady area of the garden. It gets maybe about part sun, part shade. And then finally, check out CSU Extension. We've also got tons of plant lists for you to look through. One thing though that I noticed is CSU does not have any kind of fact sheet or list of just dry shade plants. So I really kind of had to go through all of the plants, you know, individually and say, okay, will they work in sun? Will they work in shade? And so I've kind of come up with a list for you guys that is not really published anywhere. So you're getting the sneak peek. This will probably become a CSU fact sheet at some point. And yeah, maybe we should stop here before we go through the plants. What kind of questions do we have, Ruth?
Just a couple.
Sure.
One is, can a big tooth maple be placed with rock mulch?
Yeah, I think so. It'll handle the dry, it'll handle the heat. What I would not do though is put that rock mulch right up around the trunk. I'd pull it back about 4 or so inches, maybe 4 to 6 inches from the trunk. You just don't want it sitting right up on the trunk. And also just make sure that mulch isn't too thick, that rock isn't too thick. You don't want to go any more than a couple inches deep with rock mulch, because then it can get very heavy and weigh on the roots.
And then the other question is, what are your thoughts about mountain ash?
Oh, mountain ash. Sorbus alnifolia is the scientific name. I'm sad to say that. I like mountain ash. It's kind of a weak wooded tree. It's not quite as sturdy as some of the other trees. It is not a true ash. So if you're worried about things like emerald ash borer, it's not going to affect a mountain ash. I'm not sure of the water requirements for it though. Let me see if, and it's not listed in our xeric tree and shrub fact sheet, so I'm not so sure that it's xeric, but I think it's a beautiful tree. I love the blooms on it. So
and the fruit
creates some nice shade. Yeah, and the beautiful fruit. I like it.
And thanks for plugging my Xeriscape garden and my website, Amy.
Oh yeah, it's really, the City of Greeley has fantastic resources for you guys. Just go to their the water and sewer webpage and then look under conservation on the tabs at the top, and then you'll see a drop down and it'll say Xeriscaping.
And you can get directly there by just putting in conserve after the backslash. It's actually a /.
Okay,
right,
great. Okay,
carry on.
Let's get to some plants. All right, I found this this picture online. I think this is one of the Habitat Hero winners. I want to say 2015, and I'm not sure where it's at, but I thought, well, this is a nice representation of shade in a front yard. And there's so many plants in this dry shade area. So let's cover some. So we're going to start big and we're going to work our way down. So we covered some trees. Again, the trees are more to create the shade, but now we're talking about planting under the shade. So let's talk about what shrubs you can add to a shady landscape. And the first one I like is Viburnum. And there are a lot of different types of Viburnum that you can actually get that will grow really well in Colorado. They will take full sun to full shade. So they will handle the gamut of light conditions. So if you've got that spot that maybe gets that afternoon sun that's kind of hot, this one will probably do okay. Any of these in this group. The ones that you're seeing in front of you, upper left is Mini Man. That is a plant select plant, smaller viburnum, more of a bush type viburnum. Then the upper right is Wayfaring Tree Viburnum. This is a nice, kind of like a multi-stemmed, small tree, large shrub, but it will do well underneath other trees that are much larger. And then Leatherleaf or Allegheny down there in the bottom corner, that viburnum has really thick leaves, very dark green in color, and also can do pretty well here. Really the height and the width depends on the type. That's more for the Wayfaring tree or the Leatherleaf. The Mini Man stays pretty compact. But all of them tend to get white flowers. And then they also have these really thick leaves with deep set veins. And so that's why they call that one Leatherleaf. It's a really thick leaf. So that's a good one. Another one that you might try, and I might get, some people might look at this one and go, oh no, I don't like this plant. And that's okay. I like this plant. This is called Smooth Sumac. It's Rus glaber. I'm not even gonna go there with the scientific name. But it's full sun to part shade, and it will tolerate even full shade. It's what we call an understory species. So where this grows in nature, it grows underneath other trees. That's why it's called understory. Height and width on this is about 6 feet tall and wide, and it grows kind of in a thicket, and it's a suckering shrub. So it's going to spread and fill in an area. And I think this is why a lot of people don't like it. They don't expect it to do that. And if you're not expecting that and it starts to really kind of fill in, then you're not going to like that. You're gonna be like, that's not what I ordered. But if you are looking for that, which some people do, to fill in spaces, I think this is a nice one. It does have really great fall color. It's this orange to red color. It's got fuzzy maroon fruits, as you can see in both of the left-hand picture and the lower picture. Also the stems on it can be kind of fuzzy too, which is kind of fun. And it kind of gives you that tropical look, just because those big bipinnate leaves look kind of like palm leaves. So I'm sure some of you don't like the the sumac. That's okay. Rabbit brush, ironically, I did not think that this one would do well in shade, but it actually does do okay in shade. It will do full sun, it does great, but it will handle part shade. It will even handle shade. The picture you see on the bottom there is of our Weld County Extension demo garden that we've been kind of talking about, the same one that's behind me in the picture here. And I've got two little circles there showing you the rabbit brush. We're growing the baby blue, which is a dwarf type. And it is underneath our Austrian pine, and it's doing just great. Now, it doesn't necessarily flower, I think, as much as it would if it were in the sun, but it's doing okay. Size on the rabbit brush is going to be about 6 feet high to 6 feet wide, but that baby blue stays 2 feet by 2 feet. And so it's a much smaller rabbit brush. It's got a nice blue color. And I think it's more appropriate for the home landscape than just the native type. Those native types can get big and they can also kind of get floppy. But this is a nice one. So it's a native and it's a great pollinator plant as well. So don't be scared, but it, full shade, it may not do so great, but part shade, it'll do okay. Ours is doing great. Another one you might try, and you might have a hard time finding this one, I'm not sure, is rock spirea. A lot of people love the spireas because of those blooms that you can see in the upper picture there. Rock spirea is a native one. It's full sun to part shade to even full shade. This one will get about 4 feet high and 4 feet wide. And in its native habitat, so in Zion National Park is where you can find this. And where it's actually growing is in the north-facing crevices of some of these areas. So it's in places where it really doesn't see much direct sunlight at all. And it's doing fine there. And that's its native habitat. It does get decent fall color, and it does have nice fruit, nice flowers, and exfoliating bark for winter interest. And the leaves are just so cute. So that's another one you could try for a shrub. Then I think I might have one more shrub for us. Yep, Japanese barberry. Actually, I have a couple more shrubs for us. Japanese barberry is another one that can be grown in shade, part shade. It'll tolerate a deeper shade as well. There are dwarf types and purple leaf forms of Japanese barberry, but the purple ones in the shade are not going to have as nice of a purple color. They're not going to be very rich. And then also the plants, as they're in the shade, they do get a little bit thinner in their look, but they will still do okay. The size of these are about 3 feet high, 5 feet wide. They do have spines or thorns on the stem. So keep that in mind if you've got young children or pets that might be around these plants. Not very pleasant to try to walk through, which is why actually some people will use these as a security screen, or they'll plant them underneath of a bedroom window to kind of discourage, not that people are climbing through windows, but it'll discourage people, right, from coming up to your window. It does have red persistent fruit, which is really great for winter interest as well. Oregon grape holly. I love this plant. This is one of the very few evergreens that can tolerate shade. And it doesn't just tolerate shade, it actually thrives in shade. Size of this one is 6 feet high and 6 feet wide. I'm going to show you a ground cover type later on, but this one is more of the shrub form. It does have what we call broadleaf evergreen leaves. They look like a holly leaf, which is where it gets its name. It has beautiful yellow flowers, and then those flowers turn into this blue fruit. It's not really edible to us as humans. There are some animals that will eat on it. And as you put this into more shade, it tends to get more of an open habitat. So it can get a little bit wild looking, but that's okay. And then I think this is the last shrub I want to cover, and then we'll take a couple questions too. This one's called Carol Mackie Daphne. Daphne Burkwoodii. This one is also a plant select plant. It grows best in part sun, and it will tolerate even full shade. It is a semi-evergreen, and so that means that it's going to hang on to those leaves for a really long time in the winter. You can see in the upper picture here on the right, that's what it looks like in the winter. It kind of fades in color, but it still hangs on to those leaves. It's got nice pink flowers. It's got what we call a variegated leaf. That just means that it's two-tone or three-tone color. And so this one is green in the center and then white along the edges. And a couple notes about the Carol Mackie Daphne, and this is where having a plan comes in handy, is once you plant the Carol Mackie, you really don't want to move it. So you want to make sure you get that location right the first time. And that location should be very protected as well. It doesn't like the wind. I've seen these growing on the east or the northeast or even the north side of a house with wind protection, and they look great. And they don't transplant well. So again, that planning part of it is important with the Carol Mackie. Okay, so before we jump into perennials, do we have any questions about shrubs, Ruth, or any other questions?
Not too many, but Annie asks, what are your thoughts on golden currant? Too drought sensitive? Golden currant should be fine.
Yeah, you can grow golden currant in dry areas. You won't get as good of fruit production in the shade as you would if it were if it had more sun, but it'll do fine in a place where you get morning sun and then you get the afternoon shade. If you're getting maybe 4 to 6 hours of morning sun, it will do just fine. It might even, I mean, and it will do okay in dappled shade as well. You just won't get as much in the way of fruit. But yeah, great option for a drier landscape. And also I should mention, if you want good fruit production, you might want to do a little bit of supplemental irrigation on that one. So maybe just by hand, you can go out there and water it.
Also intrigued by the sweet fern bush that I see at the UNC campus. Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, I love it. Fern bush is, I can't think of the scientific name, but it's one of those plant select plants. And I too thought, oh, I wonder if we can do fern bush in dry shade. And I looked it up, and actually it doesn't do well in shade. It really prefers the full sun, but it is a low water. It is xeric. So incorporate that into your landscape. Just make sure it's got the sun it needs. Just because the little leaves, they do look like ferns, and ferns you think of as shade. So I thought maybe, but no, it's not really one for shade.
So sweet fern bush is not different than just fern bush.
I'm assuming that they're the same thing. Fern bush and sweet fern.
I think it starts with a CH.
Yeah, it does.
The name.
I'll tell you.
I can't think of it right now though.
It's Comabatiaria millifolium. Yeah. Nope, full sun. Okay.
And the kind of grayish, hairy leaves kind of tells you that it's a sun plant, in my opinion, when it comes to the xerics.
Yes, good point.
Okay, I have one more about what about wild raspberries that I see in the mountains?
Yeah, so those are called Boulder Raspberry. Let me see. I've got my fact sheet here. Rubus deliciosus. Those are, when I looked those up, it said full sun to part shade. So you could probably go into part shade with Boulder Raspberry. It's also one of those understory type, in its natural environment, it's kind of an understory plant. And so, yeah, I think it would do okay. You might get, always get better fruit production with a little bit more sunlight, but that's one you could definitely probably incorporate. Yeah, good one.
Okay, that was it. So you can go on.
Yeah, a couple others you might think about. Snowberry is another one you could do in part shade. Cheyenne privet, you can do that one in part shade. New Mexican privet can handle afternoon shade. So yeah, there are definitely some options. You just have to kind of look for that information. But like I said, I'm going to try to create a fact sheet down the road. So maybe in a year or two, we'll have one from CSU. Okay, so let's jump into some perennials. It's funny that you mentioned that about the silver leaves, Ruth, because as I go through these perennials, you're going to see a pattern, and it's not silver leaves, but it's blue flowers. So I wanted to start out with Denver Gold Columbine because it's a yellow flower, and we are not going to see that many yellow flowered options for your shade areas. So let's start with this one. I love Denver Gold Columbine. It is, it'll handle sun, it'll handle part shade, it'll handle shade. So it runs the gamut again. Size on this one is about 2 feet high, and it can spread into a clump about 2 feet wide. As you can see in that upper middle picture, that's about the normal size of it. Beautiful yellow flowers, and it blooms from June through September. And it's the longest blooming of our columbines, the yellow one. And if you cut those blooms periodically throughout the summer, you will extend that bloom time and get even more blooms. The blue, typical blue columbines, they usually only bloom for a shorter period in maybe June and July, and they're done. So this is a good one to extend that season. It is native to the Southwest, and it is also a plant select plant, and they call it Denver Gold. So I love this picture with the bottom. You can see it underneath of a nice pine there. Doing great. If you're not into the yellow and you want something that is more of the blue color, we've got the Remembrance Columbine. This is also a plant select plant. This one will get, it's a little bit smaller, 18 inches high and wide. It's actually a hybrid that was derived from our Colorado state flower, which is just the regular columbine. It has the most beautiful flowers. It's so Remembrance is its trade name. That's what it's sold under and marketed under, but its actual variety name or cultivar name is Swan, Violet, and White, and it is just beautiful. They're striking. The picture in the bottom that you see here, that is at our demonstration garden at the extension office, and it's in front of some Delosperma fire spinner, and the contrast between those two is really great. And we've got this in both sunny locations and part shade, and even a little bit more of the full shade spots. It will do a little bit better from some moisture. And I think the reason that the one in the bottom there, and even the one in the top right are doing well is because they have these big rocks around them, and those big rocks trap moisture underneath. So then those roots can get to that. So think about that when you're planting your landscapes, that those big boulder type rocks underneath is a little pocket of moisture that your plants can get to. Bellflower is another option. This one is very popular in the Garden in a Box series. You'll see this one in a few of those. This one can handle sun to part shade to shade. I have this in my yard on the east side of a fence that's a solid fence. So as soon as the sun gets over the fence, it's in full shade for the rest of the day. It's a smaller plant. I haven't seen mine get to be 18 inches high or wide yet. It's about a foot. But it has beautiful little purple bell-shaped flowers. It has a very long bloom period throughout the entire summer. It's a native, which is always great to attract native pollinators, and good for those semi-shaded slopes and even rock gardens. This one can handle very low water conditions, which is why you'll find it in a lot of the Resource Central's Garden in a Box plantings. Hardy plumbago is another option. Are you starting to see the trend here? We're seeing a lot of blue flowers, and that's just kind of a shade thing. You'll find that. Hardy plumbago, though, is an excellent plant for shade, and this one will handle the shade. 18 inches high and wide. I like to plant these in mass to really get the full effect. They prefer average soils and low water once they're established. So if you've got a little bit of a richer soil, this one will do a little bit better. Some of the natives, like the one we just saw, the Harabelle, they don't do as well if it's a really rich, moist soil. They like that lean and dry, but this plumbago will do better in a typical, garden bed. It has upright stems that are kind of woody at the base. It's got these really rich blue flowers, and then underneath those flowers, the little stalks that hold them are kind of a reddish color, so you get a little bit of that contrast happening. Actually, it blooms more toward the end of the summer and into the fall, and it does have red fall color. So I think hardy plumbago is a great one. When I showed you the picture of our extension garden and under the pear trees where it's really, really shady, this one is probably doing better than almost every other plant there, except for coral bells, which I will show you those in just a second. Another option for you, this one's doing well in our shade area too, I should mention, is Johnson's Blue Cranesbill, geranium Johnson's Blue. Sometimes when you think of geraniums, you think of those annual geraniums that are reds and pinks and whites. This is a perennial geranium, so it's different plant. This one will handle full sun all the way to full shade. It'll be about 14 inches high, 18 inches wide, blooming from late spring all the way through early fall. So a very long extended bloom period. And it has these really beautiful 5-petaled blue, periwinkle blue flowers. And then the leaves are also pretty attractive. They have really deeply cut divided leaves. It gets some red and orange fall color. So a really nice one. This one will prefer normal to sandy soil. So again, another one that's doing well in our bed underneath those pear trees. And I should mention the soil there is pretty rich and a little bit sandy, but pretty rich. And they're doing great. So I mentioned coral bells. This is another one that's doing really well in our shade area. And now we see something a little bit different than the blues. We're seeing lots and lots of different colors here that we can use. So if you want to incorporate some reds and some yellows and those deep maroon colors, or even just some traditional green colors into your landscape, and the red flowers or the pink flowers, again, not a common color you're going to find in shade plants. The coral bells are really the way to go. There's just so many different kinds of these. I had the pleasure about, oh gosh, it's been probably 15 years now. I went to the Pacific Northwest where they breed these at a place called Terra Nova Nursery. And the owner of it at the time, I don't know if he's still there or not, but he reminded me of the guy from Jurassic Park, you know, that crosses all these weird dinosaurs, and he's doing it with plants, and he's just creating all these different kinds of coral bells. And so when I say there's hundreds of these, I mean, there's probably thousands of these by now. So in the picture at the upper left, we've got snow angel coral bells. I'm not sure of the one in the center. It's probably more just a traditional coral bells. The one on the upper right is Palace Purple. I have this one here on the lower picture, that lime green one, I believe is called Lemon Lime, something like that. And that's really a great one to add that pop of color. And then they get the pretty flowers on them as well, which are often overlooked. Generally, these are going to be about 1 foot tall and 1 foot wide. They stay in a nice little clump. The leaves are really, again, what you're looking for here, and the colors are endless. If you want to extend the bloom period of the flowers on the top, cut those periodically, and that's going to help extend that. And they're easy. They're very easy to grow. They will need a little bit of water, though, to get them established. But once they're established, you can kind of back off. All right, a couple more. Lenten rose. If you haven't been down to the CSU Perennial Trial Garden, I would encourage you to do that. There's a really nice, large collection of both the coral bells and the Lenten rose, but especially the Lenten rose. It's at the corner of Pitkin and Remington, underneath the horse chestnut tree. But what you'll find there, kind of like the coral bells, just lots of variety with the Lenten rose. You'll also hear these called hellebores. It's just the scientific name of these. But they're going to be part to full shade, so they can handle that deep shade. They get about 2 feet high and 2 feet wide, although sometimes they tend to stay a little bit smaller. They have what we call Basil leaves. So you'll get this growth of leaves, and usually there's 5 to 11 in a circle, and they have sharply toothed edges. But then in late winter, early spring, so probably about now, really, these are in full bloom. And then they'll be done before anything else starts blooming, which is just interesting. But you can find the flowers in pinks and greens and cream colors and purples. They do like those richer soils, so those traditional garden beds are great for these. They're easy to transplant. Some of them will reseed a little bit around your gardens, you just know that. But I don't think they'll go very far. And then once they're established, extremely cold hardy and very drought tolerant. And so a really, really nice choice. And it'll get you into your garden when you normally wouldn't go into your garden. You'll be like, oh, it's February. Let me go see if the Lenten rose is blooming. Another great one I love is Siberian bugloss, or Brunnera. This one I have in my dry shade planting, and it is loving it. It'll handle full shade or part shade, 12 inches high, but it'll spread 24 inches wide. People love this one because it has these really nice heart-shaped leaves. Typically they're all green, but there is this cultivar or this variety called Jack Frost, which is what you're seeing in the picture here. And it has a green leaf, but with silver, it's actually more of a silver leaf, sorry, with green veination and green edges. Very hardy. It does bloom with these little teeny tiny, blue blooms, which are gorgeous, but they're so small. And it's, I lost my place. It's just a really nice, nice bloom. So anyway, very hardy, great plant. I really, really like this one. Okay, so we do have a few options for ground covers. And the first one I want to cover is sweet woodruff. And I actually found this one on the Greeley Xeriscape website. Thanks, Ruth. And wanted to include this one. This one has a wide range of growing. I used to see this growing back east a lot, but it will handle full shade or part shade. It's a smaller plant, so 12 inches high, 12 inches wide, but it will spread. So it's this nice low growing ground cover. Kind of like the bug loss, it's got these little teeny tiny flowers, but here they're white and they have a nice star shape to them. Very fragrant, which is also another good attribute. This one does like a little bit more of the moderate water requirements. So I would say if you have a really dry landscape, this one may not do quite as well. It'll do better if it's in a very deep shade, if it's really, really dry, just because that water is not going to evaporate as often. And it's hardy to -20. So you could try this one out. Another one, I mentioned the larger bush type Mahonia earlier, but there's also a ground cover type Mahonia. Instead of Mahonia aquafolia, this one is Mahonia repens, which just kind of means horizontal or creeping. So full sun to full shade, just like its shrub counterpart will handle full sun to full shade. This one has a very wide range as well. It'll get to be about 18 inches high, but it will spread to anywhere between 2 and 3 feet wide. It is an evergreen. It is a native, and it's what we call a shrubby ground cover. So a couple other great things about Mahonia is it is deer and rabbit resistant. They just don't tend to go after it as much. If a deer is hungry enough, though, it'll pretty much eat anything. I was on a class earlier today for the Windsor Library, and Tony Koski was teaching about cactus, and we were even saying the deer will eat cactus if they're hungry enough. So, you know, we can only do so much. But this one does prefer xeric conditions once it's established. But this is a really nice, if you want that yellow color in your landscape or you want that evergreen ground cover, this would be a good one. Another one you could try is Kinnickinnick, or also called Massachusetts Bearberry is another name for this one. I have this one in my little dry shade area because I wanted an evergreen to kind of be that foundation, but I didn't have enough space for the Mahonia because it's just too big and too wide. I only had about maybe 5 or 6 feet to deal with, and I didn't want to cover the whole thing with a ground cover. So I chose this one instead. Part sun to full shade. As far as the height, the literature says 8 inches high. Mine is no more than maybe 3 inches high. So I'm not sure if that's just as it gets mature, we'll see. But it can spread. It'll be about 15 inches wide at maturity. Very cold hardy. It does get a nice fall color to it. It'll kind of get this reddish gold color to those evergreen leaves. You can use this one in rock gardens as well. It's related to, if you're familiar with like the Panchito manzanita or the Chieftain manzanita, those are all Arctostaphylos. And this one is just a relative of that. So try out Kinnickinnick. Some people say the berries don't smell so well. I haven't noticed that yet though in my yard. I was a little hesitant to put this next one on here, but this is hosta. You all are probably pretty familiar with hosta, the plantain lily. Part to full shade. I think the reason I hesitate is just because I've seen these my whole life. They're very prominent back in the East, and I always thought that they were pretty big water lovers. But as I'm reading more about them and learning more about them, I'm learning that they can grow in some drier conditions if they have enough shade, I think. So if you have good soil, and this is one that likes that richer soil as well. So if you have a lean soil and it's dry and it doesn't have a lot of nutrients, probably stay away from the hostas. But if you've got deep shade or even full shade or part shade, and you've got really nice thick soil, and maybe you live in one of those homes more in the center of town where they've been around and the soil is really nice and weathered, I think then hostas will be a good choice for you. They've got beautiful heart-shaped leaves or spade-shaped leaves. There's so many different kinds that you can get. My suspicion is that the smaller leaved types are going to do much better in those lower water situations. So the more narrow leaves, like the one you see in the upper left-hand corner here, those will do a little bit better. They're not deer resistant. The deer do like these. And again, lots of different ones to choose from. And then finally, we've got a few grasses that you might be able to incorporate into your xeric dry shade area. Now, I will say with grasses, most grasses are going to prefer light shade and more water, and really all grasses tend to like light. Sorry for the typo on my screen there. But these will all do good in partial to light shade and drier conditions. So blue fescues, you could try. The Avena blue oatgrass is one that I have in the corner where it's bordered on the, let's see, the south is the house, the north is the fence, and the west is the fence. So it literally only gets light for a very short period of time, and it's doing just fine. Little blue stem is one of my favorites. It can tolerate light shade. Prairie dropseed is the one, and I should tell you which one I'm talking about. Prairie dropseed is this one in the lower middle picture. It will also tolerate light shade. And then the Korean feather or the overdam reed grasses will also handle some shade as well. Blue Avena is the one in the upper right picture underneath those trees. Little blue stem is in the lower left. I'm in trouble, it's late. And then upper left is the blue fescue. So those are some options that you might try if you want to incorporate some of the ornamental grasses. Don't forget all of those great resources though, because when I say I couldn't cover everything, I have tons of other options that I had to just narrow it down for the sake of time. But there are some other options out there for you. Any questions on plants? I'm going to go back one.
Mostly, Amy, they are comments.
Okay.
Heidi said she's planted the false forget-me-nots.
The bug loss.
I've never heard it called that, so that was interesting to me.
Yeah, I learned that too just recently. I'd always heard it called Brunnera, which is the scientific name, and then and then bug loss. I don't know. Some of the common names aren't very appealing, like leadwort, bug loss. Those are just not good names.
Yeah, wart in any name.
Yeah.
And then Janine said that mouse ears hosta is a delight, and it's good in a tiny, shady rock garden. So that's good to know.
Mouse ears. I'm going to write that one down.
I've never even seen that one.
Okay, yeah, I haven't either. One other thing I should mention, when you are looking for plants to purchase for dry shade, you're going to find a lot better of a selection at your local nurseries than you are at your big box stores. They're going to be carrying, now if you want hostas, they'll probably have those at the big box store, but maybe not that mouse ears one. You'll have to go to your local nurseries for that. And really, it's good to support your local small businesses anyway. So they're going to have much better selection of all of these Colorado specific plants. And they're going to know about them too. So you can ask them all kinds of questions. Sometimes they'll even go around and shop with you.
And then a couple more questions in the chat. How can we find out about plants that rabbits won't eat? And plant select They have 2 books. Pretty Tough Plants is their newest one. They have them listed in there. There are no guarantees on any of that, though. Rabbits, when we've had the population explosion, I would say that would be a good place to look. I don't know if I have that on my plant database. Another good place to look is High Country Gardens. Their catalog and their website is excellent, and they have a lot of those little icons for deer, whether they're pollinator friendly, rabbit deterrent. So I would check that out.
Yep, I would check there too. That's a good one.
Someone made the comment about hostas being damaged by hail, and that's where you might want to do some of those narrow leaf ones that Amy was talking about, because they would do better in the dry shade, and they would probably also fare better in hail.
Yep. Okay, I just have a few more slides left. I want to show you some other resources that are available to you. These are located on the internet. You can just search for them. Plant Select has a couple of design ideas for you for dry shade. And you'll see here that we did cover some of these today. We covered the Denver Gold Columbine and the Coral Bells. But there's some other ones here that we didn't cover as well. Mountain Lover is one I really wanted to cover. I just couldn't find enough information on it, but I've seen it growing pretty well. It's hard to find though. I don't think it's very readily available. There's those mini man viburnums. So there's some options. There's another one here that they offer. It's got a little bit more. This one's part shade. And then I think they even have one more for part shade. So check those out if you're wanting some design inspiration, or if you're just not the type that's gonna know how to organize certain stuff, you can use these. If you want to go the easy route, and as Ruth mentioned, the City of Greeley participates in this program. Garden in a Box is great. You literally buy the box, you get the information sheet with all the pertinent information about all the plants, and then you get the planting plans as well. Or you can just kind of do it your own way too, doesn't matter. But they do have one called Painted Shade, and it has a lot of the same plants that we covered today. And it's so small now, I can't read it all on the side there, but plumbago is in there. Bluebells are in there, the Johnson's blue geranium, and lots of other good ones. So check that one out. I'm not sure if they still have all these in stock or not. They go fast. So as Ruth mentioned, get on their website pretty quick if you're going to do this. And then Mountain Medley is another one that works out in part shade. So you can see some other ones here that you can try out as well.
All right, lots of people saying thanks, and I think they liked it.
Great. This was a fun one. I had to start from scratch with this one because they're just, like I said, there's not a good one-stop shop for this information.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.